Welcome back to the 12 Days of Christmas, where we study the various characters of the Christmas story to prepare ourselves for Christmas Day. Now, the one I want to look at today is the character of Simeon. He's that individual in the temple who comes up to Jesus, baby Jesus, when Mary and Joseph present him in the account in Luke chapter 2. Now, little is known of Simeon. We're only introduced to him here in all of the Bible, but there's some things to note in the text. It's probably Mary and Joseph's first journey with Jesus. It's a 6-mile walk from Bethlehem over to Jerusalem. And their heads are probably still spinning about the events that they've experienced. You may remember the shepherds, the angel visits. They're about to have two contacts in the temple that are totally unexpected. That's Simeon and Anna. And here's the reading in Luke chapter 2, verse 25. Now there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon, and this man was righteous and devout, waiting for the consolation of Israel. And the Holy Spirit was upon him. And it had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not see death before he had seen the Lord's Christ. Now we learn from the text several things. That Simeon is righteous, he is devout, and he's patient. His name the name Simeon meant one who hears and obeys. Righteous kind of communicates that as well, right? It's a word that we understand to refer to right living as well as a right attitude. That is, Simeon did the right things, but he did the right things in the right way. Now the word devout in the text is a word that has an element of caution to it, a watchfulness, a regular attentiveness. In the text, we see what he's watchful for, something that is referred to as the consolation of Israel. Now, one translator refers to this as him as a man who lived in eager expectancy of help for Israel. The fact that Jesus was born to die for all of us had not dawned on these people in the Christmas story. Even Simeon, who walked with the Lord and whom the Holy Spirit moved, is simply looking for someone to help his troubled nation. But Simeon, under the power of the Holy Spirit, reveals something more about the baby Jesus. Look at verse 27. And he came in the Spirit into the temple. And when the parents brought in the child Jesus to do for him according to the custom of the law, he took him up, that is, Simeon took up Jesus in his arms and blessed God and said, Lord, now you are letting your servant depart in peace, according to your word. For my eyes have seen your salvation, that you have prepared in the presence of all peoples, a light for revelation to the Gentiles, and for the glory to your people, Israel. Now, in just 2 verses, Simeon goes from Jesus being the hope of Israel to the hope of the world. And one wonders if the words the Holy Spirit gave Simeon were a shock even to him, right? Because during Jesus' time, the land of Israel was under this Gentile occupation, Roman military occupation, and the Jews weren't happy about it. Yet Jesus is declared here as a light for revelation to the Gentiles. By the way, this idea of a light shining, you can trace clear back into the Old Testament with passages like Isaiah 9:2. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of deep darkness, on them the light has shone. And if you jump past Luke to up into the book of Acts, Luke records there for us that when the Apostle Paul and Barnabas were preaching, here is what we find out. For so the Lord has commanded us, saying, Paul said, I have made you a light for the Gentiles, that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth. Verse 48, and when the Gentiles heard this, they began rejoicing and glorifying the word of the Lord. Note, Simeon isn't the first person to connect these two ideas together, that Jesus was both a light that would reach the Gentiles as well as be the glory of Israel. And finally, we read about Simeon in that story that his father, that is Jesus' father and mother, marveled at what was said about him. It's understandable what Mary and Joseph may have been thinking at this point. They marveled. And then we read that Simeon blessed them and said, all of a sudden he shifts from baby Jesus to Mary. Just imagine this. You can almost see him like taking the baby that he blessed, handing Jesus back to Mary, turning and then coming back around as if to say, oh, I have one more thing to say. And this is what he said. Behold, this child is appointed for the fall and rising of many in Israel, and for a sign that is opposed. and a sword will pierce through your own soul also, so that thoughts from many hearts may be revealed. It's almost like a warning at the end of his blessing. In fact, the New Living Translation renders this, that Jesus had been sent as a sign from God, but many will oppose him. Perhaps Mary would remember this as people began to abandon Jesus in his public ministry. She would know that the sword was near. But the text says, so that the hearts would be revealed. Some would reject, but others would see their need and accept. That's the story of Simeon.